So, CellMux.com, thank you very much for coming to our hugely packed room here. It's good to see so many of you have turned up. It is the end of a very good but quite hot and tiring conference, so I'm not surprised a few people have sidled off for a train here. CellMux.com is proud to be the diamond sponsor of Streaming Forum this year. We took it as an opportunity to raise profile of ourselves and what we're about. We've subtitled CellMux.com the multi-tool reference for those trying to get a video signal back to base on an ad hoc basis. Michael, who is at the back of the room here, is our operation and day-to-day editor for CellMux.com, and he is the point of contact for those of you who are interested in the products that we list. The aim of the site, I've been writing for several years for Streaming Media magazine, 12 years, about a wide variety of subjects, but in the last 3 or 4 years, the portable backpack units and portable compact units which you can plug multiple SIM cards into to create a single high bandwidth connection over a cellular network which you can use for live video backhaul. I've been reviewing several of these different vendors, and they're very geographically dispersed, and I've been increasingly asked for my opinion to compare the different technology types. And so we thought we'd pull together CellMux.com as a sort of Swiss Army knife for people in the field who are trying to get in touch with the community, to ask questions about how to use CellMuxes, how to use different techniques to get video back to base. We have a sort of membership scheme where the vendors basically just give us a little bit of turnover cash so that we can keep the whole site running. We aggregate their news. We don't publish any editorial on the site, purposefully so that we don't tread on the toes of my friends in Streaming Media, but also it gives us the ability to link out to Streaming Media and other magazines to find out, to aggregate those links into the product listings on the CellMux.com website, and be happy to give you a little tour of the site on the CellMux stand in the exhibition space if you haven't seen it already. We also aim to have forums. It's a geeks get-together. It's an online club for people who are interested in this space. There isn't currently an electronic news gathering magazine or an outside broadcast magazine. There isn't a hub for people to get together and be able to just communicate. We're not really trying to be a massive commercial venture. It's a get-together point. So hopefully, if you haven't already, please sign up onto CellMux.com. And those of you who are watching online, we've got 120 or so registrations out there. Thanks. I'm not sure which camera to look at, but it's good to have you with us. So, one of the parts of the project is to hold a monthly or around about monthly Google Hangout or something like that with the different vendors, so that you can get a chance to talk to them about their products, talk to them about how to use the products better, and just have some interface. And to start the show, I couldn't choose any one of the members or the vendors to kick the project off. I didn't think it was fair to start with any particular one vendor, and so I turned the screws on these fine gentlemen here, who actually know an awful lot more than I do about backhaul and about live links. So this inaugural panel session is really to get a high-level view about the changing landscape of news gathering and outside broadcast. We're going to look at news gathering workflows as they have been up until now. We're going to look at the key performance indicators on those live links a little bit, technology options that they have in the core, and we're going to look at technology options at the edge, which obviously will then embrace the CellMux family. So I want to take, overall through this conversation discussion, I want to take a look at how IP and IP streaming technologies are disrupting and changing that news gathering workflow and that outside broadcast workflow. And there are probably no better people in this country than these three gentlemen, and Mark, who is currently in Times Square in New York, to talk to us about that news gathering workflow. So, guys, I'd like to ask you left to right to introduce you. Well, left to right and virtually to introduce yourselves. Mark, we'll come to you on number 4 in a second. So, Colin, could you give us a little bit of an introduction about your role and your sort of interest in this space? I think we're going to guess with the microphones a little bit.
My name is Colin Muir. I'm the news gathering technology lead for BBC Scotland, and I'm currently responsible for a fleet of 7 IP satellite vehicles and a growing number of mobile bonding units or wireless multiplexers, as Dom has been describing it, and it's really changing the way that we're able to cover the live news.
My name's Guy Pelham. Up until the back end of last year, I was live editor for BBC News, and that really meant my job was to look at innovative ways of covering stories live and upload around the UK and internationally as well. So that led me into IP news gathering and most particularly the use of BSAT and bonding technology.
Richard.
My name is Richard Westwood. I work for Sky News in London. My title is Head of Links, which actually is very vague and just involves connectivity. So I look after how we get content into Sky, whether it be IP or more traditional methods. But more recently, we've been looking at, obviously, working with KA and 3G, 4G bonding devices extensively.
And Mark. Find out how the delay works.
Yes, this is Mark Lapierre. I'm at Thomson Reuters in New York. And my role is really on a technology level for production, post-production contribution, and I contribute as well to certain digital platforms that we have through the different products, B2B and business-to-consumer products that Thomson Reuters has on a global basis.
Brilliant. So let's talk about, first of all, about news gathering workflows as they've evolved. Colin and Guy, I think I probably need to talk to you collectively a little bit because you probably both share a company that you've been involved with a lot. So could you tell us a little bit about the typical BBC news gathering workflows as they have been?
Historically, I think they're pretty much the same as everybody else's up until not very long ago. If you're talking about television, the only way you went live is if you had an SNG vehicle, and there were terrestrial links and one or two other things, but essentially that was the main weapon of choice for any broadcaster, not just the BBC. And I think what's happened in the last sort of 5 years, 6 years maybe, is that situation has transformed itself, and there are now many different ways of going live, not all of which work on every occasion. They're not, you wouldn't necessarily use a bonding backpack, for example, to cover, a multi-camera, multi-path story. You wouldn't. But I suppose the point is now you have any news organisation has a much wider range of tools to cover any story you care to mention. And it's not always one-size-fits-all SNG.
So did technologies such as microwave and BGAN and so on played into that scope as we've been doing the transition?
I mean, BGAN did, yeah. I mean, there was a bit of a BGAN revolution in international news gathering, particularly about 8 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Was when it came up, when the first generation of BGAN antennas came on the market, and I think that really did transform what people could do live from difficult parts of the world. They were very portable, and okay, the bandwidth was a bit low and the picture quality was a bit but it allowed you to go live from places that you could never go you could never have gone to before. So in some ways I think that was the sort of the precursor of where we are now. It was small, it was light, it was flexible. It wasn't particularly cheap. I mean, if you do a day's worth of streaming over BGAN, your finance department knows about it quite quickly. But it did transform what broadcasters were able to do.
And Richard, is the Sky workflow always going to be identical, or broadcaster generically going to use identical workflows, or do you have nuances that you're aware of?
No. I mean, believe it or not, BBC, Sky, and ITN actually work very closely together. We talk to each other. We see what each other are doing, and you follow. Yeah. So the workflow is very similar, and SNG was the de facto. Obviously, fixed infrastructure fiber networks for places you do day in day out. As Guy said, the BGAN transformed international news. You can literally take that anywhere. And it was the forerunner of what we're now seeing with 3G, 4G bonding devices, Wi-Fi connectivity, even the humble iPhone. There's an app on there that we can use that we can stream live video to air.
And Mark, I will have to sort of allow for a little bit of latency, but Mark, in the Reuters model, you're obviously more of a news agency providing news into broadcasters internationally. Do you face specific challenges in your own news gathering and news aggregation workflow that might be specific to being an agency as opposed to being a direct-to-air broadcaster?
Well, there's certainly the part that we address almost on a daily basis is the part where the reporter or the journalist is in the field in a hostile environment. So those situations are the ones where you need to be really agile, and we've seen all these technologies being used. Like we use the BGAN, and we use like streaming technologies with cellular bonding. Obviously, there's regions that's more difficult than others. We do the store and forward in such cases as well, but it's really an evolution. When you go back to that BGAN phone or transmission mechanism, and you look at what you're able to do today and the mobility that you achieve with those systems that basically fit in a pocket or in a suitcase, it's really something that has helped us cover areas of the world that otherwise would be a lot more difficult. And we do have trucks here and there, but it's not something that now we rely on all areas for news coverage. So it's a major advantage now to have something lightweight and easy to carry around.
So until the advent of IP in the Reuters analogy, or the Reuters model, I presume it was quite difficult to find a consistent type of network technology that was available globally, and you would end up with different types of workflow for different regions, or different nuances in the satellite providers for regions. Is that correct?
We do have that challenge, and it still hits us. Like we use like SIM cards, and obviously those packs that we have or broadcast kits that we want to use in different parts of the world, they end up being some of them centralized in certain areas, and they're being shipped to cover certain events in the world, and then we end up with those situations where the hitting the ground running is what we want to be able to do. So the kit arrives in a country, and it's immediately recognizing the cellular network in that country. So because you have the proper SIM cards loaded. I have to say, in the beginning, there's been some struggle in certain countries where this is not something that you expect and necessarily prepare for, but then you have all these surprises when you get there. But it's a learning process that we went through, and now it's a lot easier. We know how to get into a country without having to go to a local store to buy SIM cards.
And Colin, how responsive does your team have to be? How much notice do you typically get? Obviously, for the crashes and the disasters, you probably don't get much notice, but for other events where you're going to take your outside broadcast technology to the field, how responsive can you be, and is that changing as well?
Well, I mean, in the past, if we were planning an event, we would have to allocate one of only a handful of satellite trucks. Traditionally speaking, our KU-based links vehicles are very expensive, and really what we've seen with the availability of ubiquitous IP, it is ultimately that we can scale things up at a much reduced cost, and we can actually take our newsroom out of the central belt in Scotland and actually start moving out to the areas where traditionally it would be very hard to actually cover. So I mean, we're actually able to deploy a KA-based satellite vehicle to the Highlands or the Islands, and we get good high bit rate upload and download, and it means that all of our editing, all of our shooting can be done on location and filed back in the same day. And also, if we are if we are covering a festival or the like, we are actually able to take a very lightweight piece of kit, put it on top of the roof of the porch cabin or on top of the vehicle, and we have high bit rate live streaming capability as well as office-based connectivity in the one unit. And in fact, that's something that we did to great success at the Hay Festival recently, where we're actually able to take that approach and actually start doing all of the live broadcasts from location over IP rather than actually uploading and downlinking and then putting back out. So we're actually straight to web rather than back to our MCRs.
So let's touch on video quality. I remember when I started webcasting in 96, 97, and I was kind of using 1:1 pixel quality video. The very idea that would ever meet broadcast was kind of ridiculed. Guy, you've probably had a couple of years longer than myself in the space. Broadcasters have traditionally been in the sort of hi-fi end of the market, expecting extremely high quality. As we've moved through the BGAN market, perhaps, but as we've moved to these more edgy technologies, when has good enough become good enough? What are the kind of breakpoints, or have you received feeds that you've refused as a live editor?
I think the way to answer that question is the audiences now are much more forgiving of quality, the video quality, when they understand the reason for it. So they know that if you're in the middle of nowhere, the video quality may not be that great. If they know that if it's a breaking story and you're maybe, as Richard said, you're going live off a smartphone as first response, they understand that. I think where perhaps they run into more difficulties are where the quality is poor for no very obvious reason. So, you know, if you're standing in Downing Street doing a two-way and the quality is rubbish, then the BBC viewer might say, well, why am I paying my license fee? But I think audiences are much more sophisticated about you know, what they watch and how they watch it, and they don't insist on something, you know, wonderfully HD on absolutely every occasion. I think they expect their studio shot to look good. I mean, they expect that to be good and HD capable. But you know, I think we're also not just talking about broadcasters here. We're traditional broadcasters. There are plenty of other organisations that are now becoming media organisations, newspapers, online digital news providers, and you know, they're embracing whole different sets of audiences, and they have different views again about what they expect in terms of quality. You know, if you're able to stream really good, effective news content onto the web, then people, you know, will watch it. In Ukraine, for example, there's an organisation which composed of a number of journalists who previously worked for other media organisations in Ukraine, and they essentially set up their own news service, and they were streaming really good news content. It wasn't particularly great quality, but it was valid and it was watched and it was appreciated by an audience that wasn't getting news from many other sources. So, you know, I think it's not quite as straightforward as it used to be. Broadcasters, yeah, used to be dead picky, but they're not anymore.
And Richard, do you remember? There must be a story to tell about the first time one of your editors or one of your news crews asked you to provision a cost-effective IP link as opposed to a high-quality fiber or something like that. Was there a particular point where that started to happen, or do you still sort of defer, if you possibly can, to the higher quality regardless of the cost?
Strangely enough, for Sky News, it was the transition from SD to HD. When the news channel was looking to go HD back in 2010, we then had to look at how we deliver content contribution-wise and how we could make the transition and actually get HD instead of SD. And funnily enough, it was that started us to look at the IP delivery, and from very early on it became obvious that streaming video over an IP network was actually a cheaper option than the traditional SD fiber.
Because of the compression?
No, not just the compression, because you're actually streaming video over an IP network, so you're leasing a data network rather than buying into a point-to-point dedicated fiber. So you end up taking on far more of the management of the hardware you're using, but it means you can set the level of quality depending on the bandwidth. So it was actually the transition from SD to HD that forced us to look at new ways of bringing content.
And Mark, I think the gap between my question and your response will sort of highlight will emphasise the point of the question. Latency. IP tends to introduce latency, not always, but broadly speaking, IP tends to introduce latency. Has that been a complication to manage in terms of synchronizing in the playouts and so on and so forth, or are there mitigating techniques now that allow you to manage latency in the production environment? 2, 3, 4.
It really depends on the assignment. So we have some sort of in the original assignment for the person to go out and do the event. Obviously, it's most of the time it's a say one-man band and with one camera. In those type of events, in the coordination part of it, we will discuss who's the customer, where's that content going, and we will adjust our system to basically cater to those customers. So you can have an event that requires a high quality and would not mind the 10, 12 seconds latency. But at the same time, we have journalists that we can take that signal to, and the text journalists would create snaps out of those live feeds. So they will rather have a lower quality, but at a smaller latency, so that the snaps that they are generating out of what the person is saying is obviously more timely. So we basically cover that in the assignment phase, where we basically know what kind of a quality ratio versus the latency that we're going to be broadcasting or streaming that event. Later on, if the event is streamed in a low latency, lower quality, well, we always have the opportunity to bring the recorded version from the field into the station and then ingest that content for post-production purposes, or reposting as a on-demand clip, those kind of things. So we tune it depending on our internal audience, essentially.
I think it would be true to say that actually the latency that we're experiencing here is quite a lot worse than we probably get on a news link. I mean, that's
about 3 seconds.
Yeah. So yeah.
The latency is adjustable. On most of the bonding devices, you adjust the latency depending on what you're actually trying to achieve. So for a live two-way contribution link, we will often sacrifice quality to reduce the latency to the bare minimum. And then if they want to, I don't know, do some content feeding, if we haven't got time to wait to storm forward, then we'll increase the latency to 12, 15, 20 seconds to improve the quality to get a clip in, and then FTP the material in full HD later.
So an interesting question, something it's an opportunity for me to ask, because I've not asked this before, but timestamping and synchronization, gen locking and so on within this environment, within IP, that must be quite a complex challenge.
Lip sync has proved to be one of the issues. I think we've all seen it. The stream will start, it'll be fine, and then halfway through the audio sync will just go out. And the only way you can get it back is by stop and restart the stream. So it's better now than it was. Certainly in the early days.
When I first started looking at this technology 4 years ago, it's come a long way to the point where actually now, as television audiences, I don't think people will actually notice that we're using this technology. I mean, in the past, I could look at a TV screen and I could tell, this guy using their supplier today, or we look at our output, we're using that type of codec. Now it's I don't think you can tell, and we're using it daily now. I mean, for example, from a BBC perspective, all of our US output is over cellular multiplexers, or rather, it's the first option now, rather than the second option. I mean, it's really changed the way that we, as an organisation, we can actually operate.
Yeah, I think as an example there, Hurricane Sandy, which hit the US a year or two back, I think it would be fair to say about 80% of the BBC's live coverage of that storm and its aftermath was done on cellular, back,
That's
on bonding kit. Because I mean, partly because 4G. Let's be honest, 4G in the States changed the game. It's ubiquitous there, and it's very reliable. It also proved the point. Actually, it was remarkably resilient. I mean, normally when you throw a hurricane at telecommunications infrastructure, it tends to have a fairly devastating effect. But actually, what we found was that it did affect things for 2 or 3 hours immediately after the storm went through, but it came back up really quickly. And BBC and other broadcasters were able to do a huge amount using 4G and using cellular to cover the aftermath of the storm. And the other plus point was, of course, those big satellite dishes had to come down during, way before the storm actually hit, because the wind speeds would have blown the trucks over or ripped the antenna off the roof. So actually, you were able to keep broadcasting longer than you would have otherwise.
And so, Mark, you must have an extensive global crew, operatives out in the field who are deploying technologies and so on. Is this kit easy to use? Has it become easier to use? Is it a skilled job that you need to have fairly high caliber engineers in the field, or can you have the high caliber engineers in the core and just send out red button technologies at this stage?
Wow. No, I think the quality at the capture is always basically the key. So you can't have a system that basically lowers that quality, and basically you're relying on people to use that technology the right way and to produce the images that you're expecting from them. What we've seen is that the quality is maintained. I mean, it could vary because of the individual, but at the end of the day, these people are professionals and do their job to the best in the conditions that they are and with the equipment that they have. Our ratio of equipment, though, is that we don't have a large amount of systems that can do live streaming from the field. The bulk of our equipment has more to do with recording, putting on a laptop and in a store forward fashion, because that's the type of business that we're in. But there's an increasing kind of ramp up of the technology for doing live streaming. But the market that we're catering to is not looking for that, like in all cases. So, but the quality has to be there. So we do that through different things, like standardizing the kits that are being used, standardizing it on the camera level, those kind of things, standardizing on the codec, and obviously, like other broadcasters, we take the content that we have, and sometimes we do have harsh conditions to deal with and quality that is not necessarily the best, and sometimes it happens on a mobile phone, but this is the image we have, and people understand that this is what's available for that circumstance.
It's worth saying that actually most of certainly the bonding kit is pretty simple to use. I mean, and it can be made even simpler. I mean, you can decide how much you're going to allow your people on location to tamper with it, to mess with the settings on location. I mean, I've come across at least one occasion where somebody who's never used one of these backpacks before has essentially taken it, gone to the location, been talked through it by somebody over there, and gone on air with it. It's not difficult, you know, I mean, I wouldn't recommend that, but you know, it's pretty simple.
You haven't yet posted kit out to people you've known?
No, but you ship it, or people will arrive in a country. You know, if you have a story breaking in country X, what any of the broadcasters would do is pick up the phone to a provider and say, "Can you give us a backpack or a camera back unit?" And the guys will arrive off the plane. They'll either find the kit waiting for them as they get off the plane or at their hotel. You know, hopefully complete with SIMs that are working, and off they go. You know, easy.
Colin, do you arm the Edge team with bonding kit as a resilience and a redundancy option to take AE, KA type models, or do you are there redundancy? Is it used as a redundancy strategy, or do you tend to be saying, look, just go out with this kit?
We just send them out with the kit. I mean, I think it's the technology's now got to the point where you quite literally plug your camera in and switch it on. I mean, all of the key manufacturers in the market, you kind of literally set up their units to do that, and you can also remotely control them from the MCR end. That has interesting impact on our MCR workflows, which we're not necessarily ready to fully adopt. But it's the simplicity of this technology, and really, as Guy says, it's the availability of LTE, high bandwidth mobile connections that's really been the turning point. I mean, we've only got one deployed unit in Scotland for news gathering, and we started very slowly. I didn't expect great things, but now it's actually our main live option in Edinburgh. One of our vehicles is actually live vehicles is being used for the Queen's Baton relay coverage. And our main protocol when a news story breaks in Edinburgh is we deploy our camera back unit, and it's working very well. It's surprisingly. I mean, one of the key things to emphasise is that it's working now over LTE. But one of the things we have to do as an organisation, as an industry, is really start reaching out to the providers and actually looking to get quality of service, which is possible. The possibility with the availability of LTE to actually start guaranteeing this stuff is going to work in the future.
So, Guy, we touched on this on email before the session on the question of the operators' enthusiasm about this type of technology, and whether there was the ability to engage and talk about getting cores out of operators and so on, so that you could start doing that. Is that something you've already had conversations about?
I haven't personally, but I know that, well, two things. I mean, one, I know that I think at least one Scandinavian broadcaster has done a deal with a telco for guaranteed bandwidth. And I think actually the telcos have bandwidth that they want to sell. I mean, 4G take up in some places is not overwhelming, and they have bandwidth to sell, and broadcasters are willing, I think, to buy if the price is right, because as we all know, the one Achilles heel of bonding technology is that you're not absolutely guaranteed that it's going to work absolutely everywhere, which certainly in 3G days was a real issue. So anything that ups the reliability and guaranteed bandwidth would clearly do that is going to be an attractive proposition for broadcasters. Whether price is right will be something else again.
And technology, it's interesting because as the bonding technology started to appear, I remember about 2 years ago at IBC, I was suddenly introduced to the News Spotter service, the new KA-SAT services, and it is interesting that now most of the bonding kit will just treat that as another IP source, and so on. I could see the traditional vehicle-based outside broadcast crew starting to think about carrying KA-SAT as their primary backhaul, because once it's locked, you've got some degree of QoS there, and then using bonding for infill. Richard,
yeah, no, absolutely. The 3G bonding devices, we started off as a sort of an add-on, but certainly for us in Washington DC now, it is the live content deliverer every day. And in fact, when we have hired local SMGs working SD and TSC and done that, they've gone, why aren't we using the bonding device because the pictures are better? And they are.
That's amazing.
And certainly in the UK, we now use KA-SAT vehicles, but they're actually using one of the 3G, 4G bonding packs, it's the encoder.
Right.
It's using the kit its best ability. And obviously, a 3G, 4G bonding device can be put on the back of the camera, used with SIMs, or you can go back to the vehicle, use it as the encoder. You know, if you put no 3G, 4G coverage, the vehicle will then give you the pipe.
Right.
And it's all about speed of deployment, and it's a cheaper resource, a fully fledged KU SNG drone. But it can also be an add-on. We've had the KA dish next to a full-size multi-camera production vehicle, and the KA dish is actually providing internet access and newsroom content for the journalists while the truck is doing the OB.
The broadcast.
So it's the mixture of the two.
I mean, it's worth mentioning Scotland. The balance has shifted to actually we've got 7 KA vehicles and only 2 KU. Actually, sorry, 3 KU vehicles, one for radio. And you know, the availability of always-on IP has changed the way we're able to work, whether that's going live or it's file-based delivery. We're able to do everything from the field. Our KA vehicles are edit vehicles on wheels that can also go live. And I mean, currently we're able to manage things like rain fade by booking a bigger carrier, say a 6 meg carrier, and only doing a 3 meg live in there to allow for to allow for degradation in bandwidth availability. But as Richard was saying, we're really now looking to move away from fixed bit rate to adaptive bit rate, which really allows us to get best of both worlds, and we can actually also start thinking about going live whilst allowing people to access the internet, and that's something that we've been testing a lot, as well as looking to bond across 2 separate KA providers to provide redundancy.
I think the ideal situation, and one can see this happening more and more as availability of connectivity increases, is to rock up on location and be able to suck up all the bandwidth that's there, whether it comes off KA, whether it comes off cellular, whether it's Wi-Fi, whatever. And essentially present that to the operator, or present it to the journalist or whoever, and say, that's connectivity, just use it. And actually, they don't care where the connectivity is coming from. They don't care whether it's satellite, they don't care whether it's cellular. It's just connectivity, and it allows them to do what they want to do. It not only allows them to push stuff back to base, but it also allows them to essentially extend the newsroom out to the field. So all those production systems that they would normally use back at base, they have available on their laptop. So the days when actually the poor bloody journalist standing at the live point was the last person to know what was actually happening, and the guys back in the studio knew more because they could see the wires. Actually, that doesn't happen anymore, or it shouldn't happen anymore. The journalist, has access, should have access to the wires, to social media, for everything they want, right, in their hand. I think that's the sort of ideal situation we're all aiming for.
So, Mark, technology options in the core. This a change at the edge often means a change at the core, not always. With Colin's just mentioned adaptive bitrate. There's presumably got to be some degree of transcoding before you can introduce that outside broadcast feed into the broadcast environment. Does that mean that you're having to introduce the MCR and the playouts and technology in your core to a new stack of technology and a new set of workflows?
Maybe at the beginning, where we have the initial conversation, the coordination. Obviously, there's all like a chain of people that get part of that process to get the signal in. But after that, once it gets into the facility, we're getting signals from various regions. So we have the small bureaus sending us content. We have the large, and we use one technology for that one. We have other technologies for when we have like larger bureaus where we have like permanent lines where we feed to them, feed back to us, and then we have those kind of wild mobile systems. The going back to baseband to like HDSDI is kind of the common way to make all these signals from wherever they come into some sort of common standard. So we end up a lot with signals that go to HDSDI and then they get recorded into our house codec, into our system. So apart from the coordination side, the handling of the live video ends up like all standardized within the within the station or the office where the signal is being received into a single standard. When we get to file-based, well, that's also again the benefit where when the reporter or the journalist comes back with the P2 card or those kind of things, then we re-ingest, and there's, depending on the crew that had sent that person, they will re-ingest in their editing system. But we see just an easier and easier way to get those signals in now, because we try to kind of standardize and have like workflows that are pre-established, and apart from those wild situations, we try to stick to things that we know and that people can react more efficiently, more rapidly into those situations.
And it's a sort of broad question. Do you get issues with matching, with metadata passing through the workflow? As a sort of general question to all of you, if any of you want to pick it up. Are there things that you've lost from the traditional broadcast workflow that if you were to ask the CellMux vendors to add that back in or to introduce that capability, do any of you have capabilities which you feel would be nice?
I'd love to have Tally right now.
Tally. Okay, that's interesting. Are there others, guys?
Well, metadata in the field has never really been part of what news acquisition. Metadata is more for moving content within the broadcast center. So, in terms of 3G, 4G bonding and IP delivery, it's not something that was there before.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not something that we've missed.
Sure.
I mean, I think if anything, it's improved our ability to use metadata, because I mean, you can actually attribute metadata to the file and send it, whereas in the past you couldn't send a piece of paper you're writing metadata on about your recording over the satellite. For example, all of the information is there, and as Guy was saying, all of the information is coming back as well.
I mean, we had a conversation a little while ago, Colin, about the workflow integration in the field. I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit more about the fact that sometimes you need to actually have an external editing tool on a laptop or something to prepare content for push into your digital asset management and so on.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the availability of IP connectivity means that we were able to extend the newsroom out to the field, and as well as deliver, we're able to pull content from our video library and actually edit that in the field after it's been downloaded, on our MacBook or whatever we're using to have it edit machine, and integrate that material into the content in broadcast quality, and then we deliver it in broadcast quality, albeit we depending on the immediacy of this news story, we may do some transcoding to be able to file send much quicker than we would normally do. But as Mark was saying earlier, we're able to do things live or quick hits in low quality and replace it with the full fat version at a later time.
I think, I certainly wouldn't want to encourage any vendor to make things more difficult on location. Metadata, the metadata can be automatically provided, and come as part of the file. Then that's fine. I mean, people, camera crews and operators generally on location hate having to fill in boxes. And sometimes they have to, but they hate having to do it. And if they can possibly avoid it, they won't do it. I just don't think there's much point in pushing for that.
I mean, something as simple as GPS coordinates and time of day have changed things dramatically.
Yeah.
Because everything is date stamped from the location, and you've got the GPS coordinates, so it's actually easy to track what file came in when. Than if it had been fed traditional method.
Right, it's coming blind.
I think one of the points hinted at is the change of workflow for MCR. For the MCR, the hub end, has been the biggest change in all of this. because most of the 3G, 4G bonding backpacks and camera back units now, what we encourage the cameramen to actually just concentrate on what they do and leave the MCR to deal with the technology.
Right.
Because once it's connected and you have a connection, it can all be remotely controlled from the MCR. So it's put far more emphasis on quality control and the technical aspects back into the hub end. And it leaves the cameraman to concentrate on what he actually needs to do, which is shoot the material.
Right. So we've had a couple of vendors in the last press releases through CellMux in the last couple of weeks about vendors that are starting to release their muxing capability for software environments so that you could build your own application on a laptop. I'm just wondering whether that might be something that's going to, do you think that's going to be, sort of broad question, that do you think that's something that's going to be exciting in the environment, or is that actually sort of, it sounds a little bit like that might be pushing the wrong way actually?
You mean building our own bonding unit?
Well, certainly, I'm not going to name the vendors at the moment, but a couple of the guys are you're able to now build your own encoding application on a laptop and have 2 USB dongles and effectively mux that link together, or use the Ethernet port as well, which bypasses the need for the pre-manufactured device.
I think that might work if you're uploading, content you're editing on a laptop, but actually, and we all do that, and so the ability to maybe increase your connectivity off a laptop might be something people will be grateful for. However, generally a laptop is not a very good live tool unless you're not moving around. I mean, the good thing about a lot of the technology that we're now playing with is that you can grab it and run down the road with it, or you can drive down the road with it really
drive
easily.
over it in some cases.
Or even better, you can transmit while you're on the move. I mean, one of the USPs, if you like, of 3 and 4G is that it's a mobile technology. So you can go live from your car. You can go live from a boat. You can go live from a train. I mean, Colin was talking earlier about the Queen's Baton Relay. That is essentially what the coverage of that is mobile. I mean, it's a relay. It's moving all the time, and it was the same for the Olympic torch relay. A couple of years before. I can't remember. It was 7,000 miles around the UK, was it? And nearly all of it was live. Well, that's because the technology is a live technology.
That's absolutely beautifully segued into the last section before we take some Q&A. For the creatives watching, the non-techies, the producers, the content designers, I wanted to just have a little chat about exactly what you're talking about, the new types of shots, the new creative potential that this technology enables. Mark, that might be less relevant for you, but I'm going to start with you. Do you see in the news gathering space new types of news footage being enabled? Is that for the creators in the audience here? What do you see the cellular technology enabling?
There's certainly a time where you appreciate the ease of use and the how lightweight and how mobile you become. In New York City, for example, handling a truck and finding line of sight for a satellite, getting parking permission. Those kind of things are things of the past. Like you go in and what, you get towed. So those kind of things. When you had to live through those type of situations, you look at today's technology and you say, well, no, you're on the go. You can be at any place. There's no like, oh, I need to be right here, and then you carry a 200 feet coax to the location where you want to be. You can be in a building. You can move through an elevator. You could put a little kit by the window and still be able to get a signal to be transmitting live. The versatility, the flexibility, and then we mentioned cars and boats and trains, like that gives the creative people the flexibility of the type of shots that they could only dream of in a OB van type of situation. So we see them basically asking for more. So, but don't they all always ask for more? But that's okay. But now some more time than others, we could say yes.
Guys, have you got favourite moments that you've seen captured by CellMux that you could have never seen earlier in your career?
It's it has changed what we do dramatically. Yeah, absolutely right. Trying to it could be New York, Washington, London, Paris, any major city has big issues parking. I mean, we still use microwave, digital microwave, because it's still a very useful tool, certainly in central London. But the 3G, 4G has changed a lot of that now.
It's another cost saving in parking fines.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it would be part of the trap, but it's the only place we can park. We're going to take a ticket, you know, and it's you take the ticket.
They don't
Every
take it,
time.
yeah. Fantastic.
The other thing worth mentioning is that the other advantage of IP is that it is essentially it's a multimedia tool. I mean, before, when we back in the old days, you know, an SNG did telly and you had a separate vehicle to do radio, and now actually you can do the whole lot off one vehicle, which if you're trying to run a multimedia operation the way, for example, the BBC is, you know, where you're asking a journalist to work across TV, radio, and online. The fact that they can be editing their TV package, they can step outside and do a TV live or do a radio live using the connectivity, you know, the KA-SAT connectivity or even the KU IP connectivity, and also, you know, work on text and essentially have everything on their laptop. It makes it a very flexible tool in a way that you just didn't have, you know, 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay, let's take we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left. Are there any questions from the floor that you'd like to ask us? Peter? I'm just going to repeat that for the webcasters. So the questions are, can you talk a little bit more about using an iPhone in this context?
Yeah, I mean, all the major vendors either have or are about to launch either iPhone apps or Android apps, and basically, you use the iPhone 3G, 4G connectivity to stream back directly to base over the mobile network. So it means that certainly with Sky, all of our reporters have a phone that's capable of sending pictures back to Sky directly.
I think there's a number of organisations who are embracing this whole idea of mobile journalism, which Mojo, which essentially, you use a smartphone or an iPad, but probably a smartphone, to do everything from shooting to editing to going live. And it's not a way of working that suits everybody, and it won't suit every story, but it's certainly, broadcasters like RTE, for example, in Ireland are making some pretty good use of that way of working, and it's all off smartphones. I mean,
all of our news journalists have smartphones now, and they're able to go live into radio using voice over IP style apps. We're able to go live over video. We've seen the point where actually an iPhone can compete with an iPhone with a good bonding app can compete with an SD SNG track. I mean, I've had conversations with colleagues where we've done live tests and they've asked what truck we've used. I mean, it's really changing the way that our journalists are able to respond, and first responders are able to respond to news, and also getting into situations where we would never be able to go live otherwise. For example, lives during floods. I mean, Richard was showing us a nice live video from a boat that wouldn't have been possible in any other way. I mean, but it's also having a smartphone. They've all got better cameras than most of our SLRs are now, and being able to shoot short form video clips and file them almost immediately is a game changer. I mean, I remember was it last year? It was the Pope's inauguration.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an example of that. I mean, there was a clip of the nuns running to get receipts, which we would never be able to have got out, turned around, and if our journalists hadn't been canny enough to use their iPhone to do that.
And I think also it's the nature of broadcasting is changing, isn't it? I mean, the online competition, if you like, is really fierce, and essentially a broadcaster or any media organisation, they live and die by their content. And if you're able to exploit smartphones or similar tools to get content back from as wide a range of locations, featuring as wide a number of news lines as you possibly can in an affordable way, then you stand a much better chance of surviving in the new environment. And I think this technology is pretty vital if you want to compete in that area, because you're only as good as your content, and you're only as good as your ability to get that content somewhere where people can see it, and the smartphone can do that for you.
Mark, are you seeing uptake of the iPhone and smartphone in the news environment?
Definitely, those systems, or those little cameras, essentially, I mean, they're everywhere. Everybody has one or two or three. So I've seen a lot of nice development in terms of live shooting. Obviously, the brackets, how you hold those phones, have always been an issue. But now you can have a lot of rigs that basically help you go along, walk around, and with your phone, it will look professional, because you don't have the jerkiness of that movement that is normally associated with the small cameras, or like the phones, or iPhone or Android. I mean, and we've gone through the other part where the personalities, the politicians, the people that you interview, and they would look at you at the beginning. 3-4 years ago, we could still feel those kind of situations where if you came in front of them with a little iPhone, they wouldn't give you the time of day. That was not like seen as professional. But now these cameras are so widely distributed, and anybody can have one, and now they use it either to record sound or to record a full audio-visual from those interviews. And you have to take that content. You have to embrace that technology is going to go many more miles, and we probably haven't seen the end of that one. So as a content aggregator or broadcaster or distributor, there's no way you could say no to that type of technology. And in years from now, you'll say, wow, this has gone a long way, and we're happy we did that. We followed that technology, and we kept up with it.
So I've just got one last question in the last 2 minutes, and you can answer this yes or no. Has anyone done a live shoot using a bonding technology from an aeroplane? Not a helicopter or balloon, but from an aeroplane.
I think it's happened in the States, but the CAA will probably.
I'm not sure what the regulations are.
And they don't tend to like you using any kind of SIM-powered device.
In fact, quite a few of the manufacturers actually state categorically you cannot use their devices in a plane.
Okay, so I'll go back to my questions. Has anyone actually made a shot from a plane here? You can answer no.
No, we've certainly never done it. I've seen video of it being done, having been done in a very old aircraft in the States, but so not a fly-by-wire aircraft. Yeah.
And equally, the problem is, as soon as all of the 3G, 4G cell towers are all aimed at the ground.
Yeah.
So literally, as soon as you get up, we tried to do a live a few weeks back from a hot air balloon. The takeoff and up to about 500 feet, brilliant. After that,
interesting.
That was the end of the connectivity, because they literally up to 1,000 feet, and you're out of 3G, 4G range.
Right. Well, listen.
Jamie Oliver does the live show with Airways on the
Does he? How's he got CAA approved?
He's probably using Wi-Fi on the Wi-Fi antenna on the aircraft. Yeah.
First class.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You can,
you can do it with that.
You can do it with guys who went to NAB last year, did some Skype calls mid-Atlantic using the onboard Wi-Fi.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's it's not everything's possible. It just depends on how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, Colin, Richard, Guy, Mark, I couldn't thank you enough for helping us kick off CellMux.com in this way. Streaming Media Forum as well. Thank you for allowing us to be your diamond sponsor, and to this audience, this has been a great session. Actually, I'm really pleased. So, thanks once again. Join us for a tea or a coffee or an ice cream if you're feeling heat like I am. And we'll see you online very soon.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much, Mark. It was a special one.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.